Welcome to Digging the Past. Imagine a small church in rural Kentucky, abandoned for decades. Its roof caved in, vines crawling across the floor, and yet, etched into the worn floorboards, symbols glow faintly, as if holding secrets that time has failed to erase. This is Crowe's Ridge, a place that has defied reason, science, and human understanding for over a century. In March 1894, Abigail Crowe, a young woman from a prominent local family, led her congregation into the limestone caves beneath the ridge. Only 4 of the 17 who entered emerged. The rest vanished without a trace, leaving behind walls carved with symbols no one could decipher. Over the next century, dozens more would disappear after venturing too close to Crowe's Ridge, each case shrouded in mystery, each leaving a trail of unanswered questions. Historians, psychiatrists, and paranormal investigators have attempted to piece together what happened. Some speak of ancient rituals, Gnostic symbols, and pre-cosmic entities described in texts far older than America itself. Others warn of psychological phenomena, group trance states, and hallucinations triggered by the cave's unique environment. Yet the patterns persist. Eyewitnesses across decades describe the same haunting figure, a woman in white, her eyes completely black, inviting visitors to discover the truth below. In 1965, doctors Robert Ashford and Helena Marsh made a startling discovery in the abandoned Crowe's Ridge Church. Hidden beneath decades of debris, faint geometric symbols suggested astronomical knowledge and ritual significance. Their research led them to the cathedral cave, where the rockslide and treacherous passages concealed deeper truths that would claim the lives of multiple experienced researchers over the next decades. What drove Abigail Crowe and her followers into the cave? Were the symbols merely decorative, or did they mark something far more sinister, a doorway to a place humanity cannot comprehend? And why, more than a century later, does the ridge continue to claim those who enter its shadows? Before we begin, if you're here, you crave the stories like this, so hit subscribe and tell me, what country are you listening from? Next, we will explore the first modern investigation into Crowe's Ridge, the symbols discovered, and the chilling testimony of Thomas Morrison, the last surviving witness of the 1894 disappearances. By 1967, more than 70 years had passed since the first mysterious disappearances at Crowe's Ridge. Most locals had learned to avoid the ridge entirely, speaking in hushed tones about Abigail Crowe and the cavernous maze beneath the limestone. Yet Dr. Robert Ashford, a historian with a fascination for ritual and folklore, refused to let the story fade. His research led him to a remarkable breakthrough. Thomas Morrison, one of the last surviving witnesses of the 1894 incident. At 73 years old, Morrison lived quietly in a nursing facility in Paducah, Kentucky, yet he carried a memory too vivid to be ignored. On October 19, 1967, Ashford drove to Paducah to meet Morrison. For 3 hours, Morrison recounted the night the ridge claimed so many. According to his testimony, Abigail led her congregation into the cathedral cave on March 3, 1894. They descended passages that seemed alive, opening before them and closing behind them, as if the cave itself were guiding their path. Morrison's voice trembled as he described the vast chamber where the vertical shaft awaited, a place larger than any church, with walls curling into darkness beyond lantern light. But it was the symbols carved around the shaft that unsettled him most. They glowed with an otherworldly blue light emanating from the stone itself, and from the depths, a chorus of voices sang, a harmony that resonated not merely in the ears, but in the very blood of those who heard it. Morrison recalled Reverend Jeremiah Crowe attempting to pull his daughter back from the edge, warning that this was not God's work. Abigail, with eyes entirely black, smiled and proclaimed, "The herald has opened the way. Those who enter will know the truth that the liars buried." She then stepped backward into the shaft, and those entranced by her followed. Morrison's testimony revealed that he and his brother had escaped by sheer luck, finding their way back to daylight, though the night stretched into weeks in their perception. For decades he kept silent, not out of fear alone, but because he doubted anyone would believe the impossible. Yet now he trusted Dr. Ashford to record the truth. This interview reinvigorated Ashford's mission. He had photographs, field notes, and historical accounts, but Morrison's testimony provided the human element, the first-hand narrative of the forces, real or imagined, that drew people into the caves. The symbols, the glowing light, the music from below, and the hypnotic pull of Abigail's presence now had context. They were not merely artifacts of the past, but active elements in a mystery that spanned generations. Inspired by Morrison's account, Ashford set out to organize a proper expedition into the cathedral cave. Funding requests to universities and public institutions failed repeatedly, citing the speculative nature of his work and the risks involved. But the truth, as Morrison had insisted, demanded investigation. If the mysteries of Crowe's Ridge were ever to be understood, someone would have to descend into the darkness where Abigail Crowe had first walked. Next, we follow Dr. Ashford and Dr. Marsh as they finally secure private funding, assemble a specialized team, and prepare to enter the cathedral cave, unaware that the shadows inside would test the limits of human understanding. In early 1968, after years of rejection, Dr. Robert Ashford finally secured funding, not from universities but from a private collector in New York fascinated by occult archaeology. The funds were enough to assemble a small professional team. Dr. Helena Marsh, an anthropologist known for her work on religious symbolism, joined the expedition. Alongside them were two graduate assistants, William Harker and David Rains, both trained in cave mapping and geological photography. Their mission? To locate the central chamber Morrison described and document every symbol they found. They arrived at Crowe's Ridge on April 12, 1968. The journey from the nearest town was treacherous, unpaved mountain roads swallowed by fog and silence. Local residents refused to guide them, warning that the earth swallows those who listen too closely. Ashford recorded those warnings in his journal, dismissing them as superstition, yet he noted the eeriness of the landscape. No birds sang, and the forest canopy blotted out most daylight. The entrance to the cathedral cave had partially collapsed in a rockslide decades earlier. They cleared debris for nearly 6 hours before squeezing through a narrow gap just wide enough for a man to crawl. Inside, the temperature dropped sharply, and the sound of dripping water echoed like footsteps. Marsh described it as entering the lungs of the earth. For the first 2 days, the team mapped the upper tunnels, marking symbols identical to those carved on the church floorboards. The geometric patterns seemed to spiral inward, always pointing toward a deeper passage. On April 14th, they discovered what Morrison had called the descent. It was a vertical shaft leading straight down, edges smoothed as though by centuries of use. Faint carvings ringed its walls, spirals, eyes, and intersecting lines resembling constellations. Using ropes and floodlights, I descended carefully. The chamber below took their breath away. It was vast, larger than any natural cave formation they'd ever seen. The walls curved upward into a dome, every surface etched with the same intricate symbols, glowing faintly when their lanterns dimmed. In the center stood a raised stone altar, worn but intact, with deep grooves running toward the shaft's edge. Marsh speculated it was a ritual site, possibly of pre-colonial origin. At 10:46 p.m., the team radioed their first major find. Geometric carvings, symmetrical, possibly astronomical, resemble maps or instructions. Ashford added, "It's not a myth. The woman's story, Abigail's story, has foundation." Their voices trembled, not from fear, but from awe. Yet something shifted in the air. The deeper they stayed, the louder an unexplained hum became, low at first, then rhythmic, like distant chanting. David Rains claimed it was airflow through tunnels, but Marsh disagreed. "It's harmonic," she said, "like singing." At 11:03 p.m., their final transmission came through. "We've found another passage, almost hidden. The symbols here are different, instructional, describing a doorway to somewhere that isn't—" Then silence. The signal cut out completely. When rescue teams arrived the next day, all equipment remained. Lights, cameras, supplies, everything except the 4 people. Their footprints ended abruptly at the altar. The cave was sealed, declared a restricted zone by state authorities. But as decades passed, the mystery only deepened. Reports of strange sounds, lights, and new disappearances continued. Next, we uncover what followed: the official investigation, the sealed records, and the first signs that Crowe's Ridge's secrets were far from dormant. The morning of April 18, 1968, began like any other spring day in Harlan County. Yet by noon, the sheriff's office received an urgent radio call from a local miner who'd seen unfamiliar vehicles parked near the old Crow's Ridge trail. 2 jeeps, both abandoned, engines cold. When deputies arrived, they found a small base camp half a mile from the Cathedral Cave's sealed entrance. Tents stood undisturbed. Inside one, a portable radio still crackled with static. The cave mouth itself was marked by fresh tool marks and disturbed stone. The deputies hesitated to enter, aware of the ridge's grim reputation. By the time the first rescue team descended, they expected to find bodies, or at least signs of collapse. Instead, they found silence. Inside the chamber, floodlights still burned. 4 helmets, 4 sets of climbing ropes, and a single camera tripod surrounded the stone altar. Not one piece of evidence suggested a struggle. No blood, no torn clothing, no broken equipment. The logbook ended abruptly at 11:03 p.m., the same time the final transmission had cut out. The discovery made headlines across Kentucky. 4 scientists vanish in cave mystery. Reporters arrived from as far as Chicago and New York, but within a week the story disappeared from national coverage entirely. The official explanation was swift and unconvincing: cave instability, probable collapse, presumed fatalities. The site was declared too dangerous for recovery. A government team sealed the entrance permanently, citing public safety. Behind the scenes, however, something stranger occurred. Dr. Ashford's personal notes, sent to the university's archive weeks before the expedition, were quietly removed from catalogues. Dr. Marsh's previous research on ritual symbolism vanished from the anthropology department's files. Even the private investor who funded the trip, identified only as Mr. D. Harlow, withdrew all correspondence and dissolved his foundation within months. When journalist Sarah Lynn Cooper attempted to investigate the disappearances in 1971, she was denied access to county records. A clerk told her the case file had been transferred to federal custody. Cooper persisted, writing in her personal diary that she'd seen a classified memo referencing Crow's Ridge anomaly containment. Days later, she withdrew from journalism entirely, citing severe stress. In 1973, hikers reported hearing faint singing near the sealed entrance. When rangers arrived, they found footprints circling the gate, 5 sets, barefoot, leading into the rock face itself. The cave had not been breached, yet the footprints ended abruptly, as if the ground had absorbed them. Locals once again began to whisper about Abigail Crowe. The woman who vanished into the earth now seemed to call from it, her name carried by the wind across the hollows. "She's still in there," an elderly farmer told a local pastor. "Still waiting for those who listen." By the decade's end, Crow's Ridge had claimed at least 7 more people: spelunkers, thrill-seekers, and researchers who ignored the warnings. The state's official stance was clear: Crow's Ridge is closed. Entry is a federal offense. But stories spread nonetheless. Some claimed to have seen lights under the soil on moonless nights. Others swore they heard hymns echoing from beneath their feet. Next, we follow the new generation of explorers drawn to Crow's Ridge in the 1980s, and the haunting evidence they left behind that suggested the cave was far from empty. By 1983, the legend of Crow's Ridge had settled into local folklore, a ghost story told around campfires and in dimly lit taverns. But that year, a new generation of explorers emerged, university students chasing fame, driven by curiosity and the thrill of rediscovery. One of them was Tom Redding, a geology major from the University of Louisville. Tom had grown up hearing stories of the Ashford expedition from his grandfather, who'd worked as a deputy in Harlan County during the 1960s. According to family whispers, his grandfather had always believed the scientists didn't vanish. They were taken. By what, he never said. Tom and his small team of 3 friends, Janet Miller, Paul Crowe, a distant descendant of Abigail's family, and recording technician Eric Dunn, set out to locate the sealed cave entrance. Using county maps and aerial surveys, they discovered an anomaly, a depression in the ridgeline that didn't match natural erosion patterns. Beneath the layers of soil and vine, they uncovered a line of rusted bolts and a collapsed iron gate. The federal warning signs were still there, corroded and half buried in moss. Against all advice, they pried it open. Inside, they found the air strangely warm and metallic. The walls glistened as though coated in condensation, yet no moisture dripped. Eric, who operated the camera, described a faint hum, a frequency low enough to feel more than hear. As they moved deeper, Janet began to notice carvings on the walls, symbols matching those in Ashford's old field notes, circles within circles, radiating lines, and what appeared to be human figures kneeling before an archway. 200 meters in, they found what they came for: the cathedral chamber. The altar still stood in the center, unchanged. Floodlight cables from the 1960s expedition still clung to the rock, the bulbs intact but darkened with age. Tom recorded everything, meticulously: film reels, cassette tapes, and photographs. But the recordings captured more than they expected. When played back later, the audio contained overlapping whispers. Words too faint to distinguish, but rhythmic, almost liturgical. Janet claimed she could make out her own name spoken twice, though she hadn't said it in that moment. 3 nights later, the team returned to the site for a follow-up survey. That night, Eric Dunn disappeared. His sleeping bag was found unzipped, his camera missing. The others searched until dawn before reporting his absence. Local police dismissed it as an accident, another lost spelunker. But Tom's later testimony told a different story. He said he'd seen lights under the cave floor, faint, bluish, pulsing in rhythm. He believed they weren't reflections. Weeks later, the undeveloped film reels surfaced at a pawn shop in Knoxville. The store clerk claimed a tall man with a limp sold them, saying only that they were from the ridge. The footage, when developed, was partially corrupted. Frames showed the team entering the chamber, then cutting abruptly to static, followed by a single image of the altar glowing faintly, a silhouette standing behind it. Experts who examined the footage confirmed it hadn't been tampered with, yet the figure's outline appeared elongated, arms too long, proportions wrong. The rediscovery reignited interest in Crowe's Ridge, but also something darker. As researchers and journalists flocked to Harlan County, strange phenomena increased. Livestock found mutilated near the ridge, underground vibrations recorded during storms, and electrical interference that disrupted local radios. By 1986, federal authorities once again sealed the ridge, this time with reinforced barriers and 24-hour surveillance. Unofficially, it became known as Zone 12B. Next, we uncover what investigators found when they opened the tears. We recovered film reels for analysis, and the single word that appeared burned into the final frame: awaken. When the recovered reels from the 1983 expedition reached the University of Kentucky's Geology Department, they were quietly transferred to a private lab in Frankfurt for restoration. The footage, originally captured on 16mm film, showed severe light distortion. Frames burned as if by an unseen heat source. But as the technicians cleaned and stabilized each reel, patterns began to emerge. In one sequence, the camera pans across the chamber walls. The carvings, once thought to be simple circles and spirals, form a coherent pattern when connected. They appear to chart something subterranean, a network of pathways descending beyond the recorded footage. The central symbol, however, defied interpretation: a vertical shape resembling a human form enclosed within an oval, surrounded by the inscription, "Those who listen awaken the earth." But the final reel was the most disturbing. As it was projected for analysis, the room's temperature reportedly dropped several degrees. The film showed Tom Redding's camera facing the altar, lights dimmed. For 6 seconds, nothing happens. Then, a flicker of movement, a shadow, rising where no source of light should have cast it. When the screen froze, the single word appeared scorched into the emulsion, visible only under ultraviolet light: awaken. The technicians dismissed it as chemical damage at first, but one of them, a man named George Fenton, began reporting auditory hallucinations days later, low-frequency humming and what he described as chanting from below the floor. 2 weeks after his report, Fenton went missing from his home in Lexington. His wife told investigators she last saw him sitting upright in bed, listening to something no one else could hear. Following his disappearance, the federal government confiscated all remaining film reels and closed the laboratory. Every technician involved signed non-disclosure agreements under the National Security Clause. Unofficially, the case was reclassified as C-72, Geological Phenomena, Restricted. In the years that followed, Fragments of the film resurfaced online, leaked screenshots showing the cave chamber illuminated in unnatural blue light. None of these could be authenticated, but their timing coincided with new seismic activity around Crow's Ridge. Small tremors, recorded on nights of heavy rain, emanated not from the surface, but from directly below the ridge. Local residents began to experience a recurring nightmare, standing before a massive underground door, hearing voices chanting their names. Some claimed to see markings appear on their walls overnight, circles etched into plaster or drawn in dust. One miner's widow told a local reporter that she heard her late husband calling from under the floorboards. A small independent researcher, Dr. Evelyn Harrow, began documenting these cases in 1991. She proposed that the cave wasn't just geological, it was an acoustic anomaly, a structure designed to amplify human resonance. Her theory was that the cave's architecture interacted with sound waves in such a way that prolonged exposure could induce hallucinations or memory distortions. But her findings were never published. Harrow vanished the same year, her home found abandoned, notes scattered, doors left open. The last line in her journal simply read, "The frequency is alive. It responds when you speak its name." By the late 1990s, Crow's Ridge had become a place of whispered warnings once again. Yet curiosity has never been a respecter of boundaries. And in 2003, one amateur documentary team defied every federal order and entered the cave with modern equipment, unknowingly recording the final documented descent into the cathedral chamber. Next, we follow the 2003 documentary crew and the terrifying evidence they captured before vanishing without a trace. In the spring of 2003, a small independent film collective from Tennessee, calling themselves Hollow Earth Productions, set out to make a low-budget documentary on Appalachian legends. Their director, Mark Kellerman, had heard the whispers of Crow's Ridge his entire life, but what drew him there was not folklore. It was the forbidden. The team of four, Mark, cinematographer Lauren Doss, sound engineer Ricky Hale, and local guide Eddie Palmer, entered the ridge on April the 12th, armed with modern recording equipment, night vision cameras, and digital sound monitors. Their plan was simple: capture enough footage inside the sealed zone to sell a feature-length documentary. But what they found instead would become one of the most disturbing lost recordings in Appalachian history. The footage begins with daylight shots of the ridge, its limestone surface cracked like brittle bone. Mark's voice narrates, steady but uneasy. "No one's been here in decades. The silence. It's not natural. Even the birds don't sing." They break through the government fencing with bolt cutters, their headlamps flickering in the dim light. As they descend into the cave, the air pressure changes dramatically. Ricky's microphone records a low thrum, steady as a heartbeat. It's at 19 hertz, the exact frequency known to cause fear and visual distortion in humans. 30 minutes in, they find the old expedition gear, tripod frames, broken cables, and a single metal placard reading Zone 12B, property of us Geological Survey. The team jokes nervously, but none of them laugh long. The deeper they go, the more their voices begin to echo unnaturally, as if the cave walls are responding. Lauren's camera captures something unusual in the footage. Dust motes hanging motionless in the air, unmoving despite the team's breath. Eddie, the local guide, begins muttering scripture under his breath. He refuses to step closer to the altar chamber. When Mark insists, Eddie drops his torch and runs back toward the surface. His panicked breathing can be heard echoing behind them for nearly a full minute before it abruptly stops. The three remaining members continue deeper. Around the 37th minute mark, Ricky picks up what he calls reverse harmonics, the sensation of their own voices returning in mirror form, as though something below is mimicking them a fraction of a second late. Lauren swears she hears her name whispered twice. Then the camera shakes violently. A sudden gust of air extinguishes all light except for the red recording indicator. Mark's voice, trembling, says, "Do you hear that? It's like singing." A low, rhythmic chanting fills the chamber, the words indecipherable but structured. The altar glows faintly blue in the darkness. For 2 full minutes, the team stands frozen before the recording cuts to black. 3 days later, a park ranger found their van abandoned at a gas station outside Harlan County. Inside were water bottles, unopened food packs, and a single camera case containing one intact SD card. When analyzed, the footage ended at the exact moment the chanting began. The file name was auto-labeled by the device's firmware, Awaken02 MP4. No bodies were ever found. The footage was briefly circulated online before being removed under copyright claim by an unknown government agency. Yet a handful of viewers who downloaded it early described one final frame that didn't appear in the archived version. A brief flicker showing 4 silhouettes around the altar, joined by a 5th, taller figure standing behind them. To this day, the surviving timestamp reads 04-1203, 3:33 a.m. Next, we uncover what researchers discovered from the recovered audio frequencies and why scientists now believe the cave itself might be alive. When the footage labeled Awaken02.MP4 was recovered from the Hollow Earth team's van, the Kentucky State Police turned it over to the Department of Energy for audio contamination analysis. It seemed an odd choice at the time, but the explanation came later. Crow's Ridge sat atop a web of old mining shafts and abandoned boreholes that made the ground itself act like a natural amplifier. The first scientist to examine the recording was Dr. Samuel Trent, an acoustics researcher at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. He described the sound captured beneath the chanting as an infrasonic resonance that behaves like a living pattern. Unlike normal echo or vibration, the frequency didn't decay. It grew stronger the longer it was played. When Dr. Trent and his team filtered the sound spectrum, they discovered something impossible. A recurring rhythm that mirrored human brainwave patterns, specifically in the theta range, associated with dreaming and trance. The cave, it seemed, was reflecting the human voice back not as an echo, but as a signal. Altered, almost conscious. They isolated one sequence where Lauren Doss said, "Mark, stop, please stop." And beneath her voice came a layered reply in a lower tone. "You woke it." The words matched her cadence exactly, only deeper, slower, like a distorted mirror. Tests on the audio caused strange technical issues in the lab. Hard drives corrupted. One researcher claimed to hear whispers through noise-cancelling headphones. Another fainted mid-analysis, later reporting a vivid hallucination of standing in a vast stone hall filled with whispering figures. The session log shows his only written note before collapse. The sound moves when you don't. After the incident, the file was locked under restricted classification. But in 2006, a digital backup leaked onto a private data-sharing forum used by sound engineers. It was downloaded just 32 times before vanishing. Within weeks, multiple users reported unexplained hearing issues, persistent tinnitus, migraines, and in one case, sudden hearing loss. Yet a copy survived. It was eventually obtained by independent researcher Dr. Elaine Mercer, a cognitive psychologist from the University of Michigan. Mercer's analysis was chilling. She proposed that the cave produced a self-reinforcing infrasonic loop, essentially a sound organism. Her published summary in 2007 stated, "Crow's Ridge behaves as if it has memory. The resonance responds to human presence not passively, but interactively. In simpler terms, the cave learns from what it hears." Dr. Mercer's theory was dismissed by the scientific community as fringe speculation. But when journalists requested her raw data for review, her lab reported a break-in. Her research drives were stolen. Mercer herself vanished days later while traveling to a conference in Asheville. Her rental car was found near the Kentucky border, doors unlocked, keys still inside. After her disappearance, the Crow's Ridge site was officially declassified, but access remained heavily restricted under environmental law. Publicly, it was described as a stabilization zone due to geological risk. Privately, federal reports referred to it by a new name, Acoustic Containment Area 47. Locals, however, had another word for it, the mouth. Next, we uncover what happens when a journalist defies all restrictions in 2011 and captures the sound live, broadcasting it to the world for 47 seconds before everything went silent. On the night of October 14, 2011, investigative journalist Ethan Calder drove to the restricted Crow's Ridge area with a small mobile broadcast team. Calder had spent months compiling records of the disappearances from 1894 to 2003 and believed he could finally document the phenomena firsthand. With a high-powered satellite uplink and thermal cameras, he planned a live stream to an online audience. By 9:47 p.m., Calder reached the perimeter of the restricted zone. The forest was unnaturally still. He narrated to the camera, "If you're just joining us, we are inside what locals call the mouth. There's supposed to be singing tonight, and I intend to capture it, live." For the first 20 minutes, nothing occurred. The camera panned over limestone outcrops and thick undergrowth. Then, at precisely 10:12 p.m., faint vibrations began under Calder's boots. The team described it as throbbing stone rather than sound. Thermal cameras showed figures moving beneath the forest floor, corresponding to no visible cave or tunnel. At 10:15 p.m., the air filled with low harmonic chanting. Calder's microphone picked up the layering of voices, the same complex polyphonic tone described in 1894 and again in 2003. Listeners worldwide reported hearing the stream in real time. Hundreds called the broadcast mesmerizing and terrifying, claiming they were physically drawn toward the screen, unable to look away. Calder attempted to speak. "We are approaching the entrance. Oh God, listen." The feed cut off mid-sentence. Only 47 seconds of audio survived, but it was enough. Independent analysis revealed frequencies between 2.3 Hz and 12 Hz, below human hearing, yet capable of inducing hypnotic trances and nausea. The thermal footage showed 5 indistinct figures forming a circle on the ground, glowing faintly blue, mirroring the symbols reported over a century ago. Hours later, Calder and his team were found at the edge of the restricted zone. Their cameras and equipment were intact, yet the journalists themselves appeared changed. Witnesses described them as vacant, unresponsive, their eyes dilated, murmuring phrases like, "The door, it's open," over and over. Medical examination found no trauma, no chemical intoxication, only elevated theta brainwave activity consistent with extreme trance states. In the days following, viewers who had watched the live stream reported nightmares, auditory hallucinations, and a persistent feeling of being called underground. Some claimed they could hear the singing continuing, faintly, inside their own homes. Local authorities issued a formal warning. Any unauthorized approach to the Crow's Ridge area would result in prosecution. The surviving footage was archived, partially analyzed by Dr. Naima Qureshi, a neurologist specializing in auditory psychophysiology. Her report concluded, "The Crow's Ridge event of 2011 demonstrates a direct interaction between environmental acoustics and human cognition that is unprecedented. The phenomenon is persistent and responsive, suggesting an unknown mechanism actively engaging human neural pathways." For the first time, the world had not just heard of Crow's Ridge, it had experienced it, if only virtually. Yet even as authorities warned the public, local reports continued. In November 2011, a hiker described seeing a woman in white, eyes black as night, standing at the edge of the forest, softly singing. She beckoned silently. The hiker fled. No one has seen Calder since that night, and the 2011 live stream remains one of the few pieces of direct evidence of the cave's ongoing activity. Next, we delve into the modern technology experiments of 2015 to 2023, revealing thermal anomalies, seismic disturbances, and patterns suggesting the cathedral cave's influence. She may extend far beyond the forest floor. By 2015, Crow's Ridge had become more than folklore. It was a locus for scientific curiosity and modern observation. A team of seismologists from the University of Kentucky, led by Dr. Robert Chen, installed high-sensitivity monitoring equipment across the ridge to detect vibrations, subterranean shifts, and other anomalies. Within weeks, the results confounded expectations. From March 1st to March 14th, 2015, the instruments recorded repeated seismic pulses emanating from deep beneath the forest. Each pulse occurred with precise 3-hour intervals, an almost ritualistic consistency. Chen remarked in his report, "These vibrations do not match any known geological activity, nor do they correspond to surface events. The regularity and pattern suggest either highly organized human activity or an unknown natural phenomenon entirely." Meanwhile, Thermal imaging conducted simultaneously revealed pockets of intense heat below the Earth, inconsistent with known geothermal sources. Small figures appeared intermittently on the imaging, moving through subterranean pathways. The shapes were roughly human, but glowed faintly blue, echoing the spectral light described by witnesses in 1894 and 1967. By October 2023, teenagers from Haaland recorded what would become the latest publicized encounter. A blurry figure in a white dress emerged from the forest near the restricted zone, singing and calling them by name. The video, which went viral on social media before being deleted, was corroborated by reports of fresh Earth disturbances near the thermal anomaly sites identified in 2008. Collectively, the evidence suggested something alive and responsive beneath Crowe's Ridge, persistent over 129 years. Scholars, paranormal researchers, and law enforcement noted the unchanging consistency: the figure in white, the blue light, the singing, the symbolic carvings, and the disappearances. And each event appeared linked to a specific underground locus, the Cathedral Cave system, even though it had been permanently sealed since 1989. Dr. Chen summarized the modern findings in 2016. "We are observing phenomena that are neither fully geological nor fully human in origin. The cave's influence extends far beyond the sealed passages. There is a persistent signal, potentially cognitive or electromagnetic in nature, affecting the human mind. The urgency to approach or descend underground appears externally induced. It is as if the cave itself reaches out to draw people in." Over the following years, anecdotal reports continued to surface. Hikers, campers, and forestry personnel claimed hearing singing, seeing figures with black eyes, and feeling irresistible compulsion to enter the ground. In every case, authorities found no trace of individuals or natural explanation, only subtle evidence: thermal anomalies, disturbed soil, or faint carvings on rocks and trees. By 2023, Crowe's Ridge had achieved a terrifying equilibrium, a place where time seemed to stretch, where technology, science, and folklore intersected, and where the Cathedral Cave's legacy of disappearances, trance states, and unearthly music persisted, challenging every boundary of reason. Despite advanced instrumentation, no scientist has solved the mystery. Every attempt to document, measure, or intervene has been met with vanishing participants or inexplicable anomalies, reinforcing the chilling warning left by witnesses across more than a century. Do not go down. Do not follow the singing. The door is open, but the truth is not meant for us. Next, we explore the patterns of influence Crowe's Ridge exerts on those nearby, including hypnotic experiences, compulsions, and the documented psychological effects on multiple generations. The mysteries of Crowe's Ridge were never confined to the subterranean caves. Reports spanning more than a century suggest that the ridge itself exerted influence on the minds of those nearby, subtly or overtly compelling people to approach, observe, or descend into its shadowed depths. From the 1894 disappearances to the modern encounters, one recurring detail stands out: the irresistible urge to follow, as if drawn by a voice or presence beyond ordinary perception. Thomas Morrison, the sole survivor of Abigail Crowe's original congregation, described feeling a compulsion he could not explain, a psychic pull guiding his steps toward the cave, though he ultimately resisted it. Psychologists studying the 1968 Ashford expedition, including Dr. Helena Marsh, noted patterns of trance-like behavior. The recovered audio tapes suggest that even experienced researchers could suddenly enter synchronized, almost hypnotic states, responding to stimuli imperceptible to observers. When Dr. Mendes' 1989 caving team discovered the hidden corridor, their video footage captured a similar phenomenon. In a matter of seconds, all 5 team members walked in unison toward a concealed passage, entirely ignoring verbal prompts or environmental cues. Modern analysis by Dr. Graham Russell, a forensic psychiatrist, provides insight. The speed, coordination, and uniformity of these behavioral changes are unlike anything in documented cases of mass psychogenic illness. The external stimulus, auditory, visual, or otherwise, must be extremely compelling, possibly originating from a source unknown to science. Even outside the caves, reports indicate that the ridge affects perception, memory, and time. Ranger David Kim, who encountered a young woman in period clothing in 1994, experienced vivid dreams of descending underground, hearing voices and singing in darkness. He later cited these hallucinations as a major factor in his resignation, stating that the psychological strain was intolerable. Similarly, in 2003, Lisa Chen, the sole survivor of the Kentucky Paranormal Research Team, recounted feelings of complete disorientation, unable to track time or her own movements while attempting to follow her missing companions. Her account aligns with prior witness testimonies, suggesting that the area warps both mind and chronology, possibly to induce obedience or compliance with forces within the underground chambers. Researchers who have examined the site post-2000 note a pattern of cumulative influence. Individuals with prior interest in Crow's Ridge, often students, paranormal enthusiasts, or locals with historical knowledge, report stronger and more vivid compulsions. It is as if the ridge itself recognizes intent, drawing the most inquisitive or susceptible toward the hidden corridors. Even the thermal and seismic anomalies documented between 2008 and 2015 may play a role. Some scientists hypothesize that these phenomena could generate auditory or electromagnetic effects capable of altering human consciousness, reinforcing the persistent urge to explore forbidden areas. Whether these forces are natural, supernatural, or the product of an ancient unknown intelligence remains unknown. For over 130 years, Crow's Ridge has proven resilient, continuing to ensnare minds and bodies alike. Despite fences, gates, and official warnings, the lure persists. It is a psychological and physical trap, a site where human curiosity is weaponized against itself. Every witness, every disappearance, every technological anomaly adds another layer to the enduring enigma. Next, we will examine the hidden history of Abigail Crowe herself, her personal records, diaries, and the occult knowledge that may have initiated the curse that continues to claim lives today. To understand the horrors of Crow's Ridge, one must first understand the woman who began it all, Abigail Crowe. Born in 1867 in Harlan County, Kentucky, Abigail grew up in a remote farmhouse on the outskirts of the Appalachian foothills. From an early age, locals noted that she possessed an unusual presence, a gaze that seemed to peer through the soul, and a natural ability to command attention. By the time she was a teenager, she had begun collecting ancient texts, religious manuscripts, and obscure occult writings, including translations of the Gospel of the Egyptians and fragments of pre-cosmic mythologies that would later appear in the symbols etched throughout the cathedral cave. Abigail's early journals, preserved in private collections and examined by Dr. Ashford, reveal a woman fascinated by hidden knowledge and the nature of reality itself. She wrote of realms beneath the limestone, where the truth lies waiting, and of voices she claimed spoke to her from within the earth, offering guidance and warning in equal measure. Her rise to prominence in Harlan County came slowly. She first gathered a small circle of followers in her late teens, initially preaching unorthodox interpretations of Scripture and emphasizing personal communion with unseen forces. By 1894, her congregation had grown large enough to necessitate a meeting place, what would become known as the Crow's Ridge Church. But Abigail's influence extended far beyond sermons. She led her followers into the limestone caves beneath the ridge, claiming these chambers were sacred portals where the veil between the mortal and the divine could be pierced. Documents recovered by Ashford include Abigail's own maps of the caves, annotated with strange symbols, circles, and lines resembling astronomical charts. Some symbols are cryptic, seemingly conveying instructions rather than decoration. One page, dated 1892, reads, "The door opens where the stones hum. Those who enter will see what was buried by the liars, what the world forgot. Do not falter. Lead those who are chosen." Abigail's methods combined ceremony, music, and a deep understanding of human psychology. Witness testimonies describe how she could induce trance-like states in her congregants, leading them to descend into the cathedral cave for hours, sometimes days, with no memory of fatigue, hunger, or passage of time. Thomas Morrison's later accounts corroborate this, noting how the cave itself seemed alive, and she guided us as if she were part of it. But Abigail was more than a charismatic leader. She was intellectually formidable. She studied astronomy, geometry, and ancient languages, applying her knowledge to align symbols in the cave with celestial events. Some researchers, including Dr. Marsh, have speculated that these alignments could suggest rituals tied to cosmic cycles, possibly intended to open doors beyond human comprehension. Her ultimate disappearance on March 3, 1894, remains shrouded in ambiguity. Reports suggest that she led 17 followers into the cathedral cave, never to emerge. Witnesses described her stepping into the vertical shaft at the chamber's center, her eyes completely black, her voice commanding, promising revelations to those who followed. Only a handful escaped, leaving behind the mystery, the symbols, and a legacy that continues to claim lives. Abigail Crowe's life, her studies, and her rituals provide crucial context to the centuries-long pattern of disappearances. She was not merely a fanatic, she was an orchestrator of something far beyond normal comprehension, an architect of a reality that exists in parallel to ours, calling to the curious, the brave, and the unwary. Next, we will explore the symbols of Crowe's Ridge, their origin, possible meanings, and why they continue to compel individuals across generations to enter the hidden depths beneath the ridge. If you've ever wondered why Crowe's Ridge has claimed so many lives over more than a century, you need to look closely at the symbols etched into the limestone, wood, and even the surrounding trees. These markings are not random graffiti, they are deliberate, intricate, and as Dr. Marsh noted in 1968, instructional, not decorative. The symbols first drew scholarly attention when Dr. Ashford and Dr. Marsh documented them in the abandoned church in 1965. They appeared as geometric patterns, interlocking circles, and angular designs, sometimes carved into wooden floorboards, sometimes etched into the limestone of the cathedral cave itself. In some cases, the symbols seemed to form sequences resembling mathematical formulas or astronomical charts. Historical research suggests that some of the markings correlate with ancient Gnostic texts, particularly those referencing pre-cosmic entities and hidden pathways to other realms. Certain symbols appear in the Gospel of the Egyptians and other obscure manuscripts from the 1st century's AD texts, long thought to be geographically and culturally distant from Kentucky. Their presence at Crowe's Ridge raises unsettling questions about the transmission of secret knowledge across time and space. Dr. Marsh theorized that the symbols serve multiple purposes. Ritual guidance. They appear positioned to direct movement through the cave system. Morrison described corridors that open before the group and close behind them, as if the cave itself read the symbols. Astronomical alignment. Some patterns line up with celestial bodies during certain times of the year. This implies knowledge of cosmology and perhaps a ritual tied to celestial cycles. Psychological influence. Observers of those who entered the cave repeatedly report trance-like obedience and heightened suggestibility, hinting that the symbols may interact with human perception, guiding behavior subconsciously. One of the most chilling features of these symbols is their persistence across time. They appeared in 1894 during Abigail Crowe's original ceremonies, were observed again by Ashford's 1968 expedition, and even contemporary accounts describe symbols appearing on trees and rocks near the restricted cave area. Witnesses like Ranger Patterson in 1973 and Ranger Kim in 1994 noted that the symbols seemed to move or glow faintly, giving the impression of living, sentient markings. The symbols are not limited to geometric abstraction. Some include figures resembling human forms or animal-like shapes, often intertwined with spirals, arrows, and lines pointing downward into the earth. Audio recordings captured by investigators in 2003 suggest that chanting or singing near these symbols produces audible harmonics that affect the human nervous system, further reinforcing their mysterious and possibly supernatural purpose. Attempts to translate or decode the symbols have produced mixed results. Scholars with expertise in Gnosticism, cryptography, and archaeology have each offered different interpretations, yet none have arrived at a conclusive understanding. The consensus among experts is that the symbols are multi-layered, functioning simultaneously as ritual instruction, spiritual communication, and perhaps even a key to a phenomenon outside conventional reality. As decades pass, the symbols continue to compel curiosity and obsession. They are the reason so many have vanished, drawn by the allure of hidden knowledge and the irresistible urge to descend into darkness. Next, we will follow the 1968 Ashford expedition into the cathedral cave. documenting their progress, discoveries, and the mysterious final moments that would see 4 trained researchers vanish without a trace. April 14, 1968, marked a turning point in the Crow's Ridge mystery. Dr. Robert Ashford, finally funded by private benefactor Charles Westbrook, assembled a team that included Dr. Helena Marsh, cave expert David Chen, and documentary filmmaker Patricia Reynolds. Equipped with professional caving gear, ropes, powerful lights and cameras, they planned to explore the cathedral cave in a methodical, scientific manner. For the first time, Crow's Ridge would be studied with proper equipment and expertise. The expedition began without incident. The team followed mapped passages, documenting every chamber and marking the location of symbols. Within the first 3 days, they had reached depths over 400 feet and navigated past the rock slide that had hindered Ashford's earlier investigations in 1965. Dr. Marsh's notes describe walls and ceilings covered in symbols, etched so densely that entire chambers seemed alive with strange patterns. She wrote, "Once you move beyond the first 100 meters, the markings are everywhere. It's as if the cave itself is instructing those who enter." On April 17th, the team discovered a narrow corridor precisely matching Morrison's account from 1967. The walls had been artificially smoothed, evidence of deliberate human modification. David Chen, in his expedition log, noted that the passage descended steeply, guiding explorers deeper into the cave, exactly as Morrison had described decades earlier. Dr. Ashford was certain this was the path Abigail Crowe had taken in 1894. By 6 p.m., the team reported finding the large chamber Morrison had described, the one containing the vertical shaft and the glowing symbols around its edge. Patricia Reynolds' audio recording captures Dr. Ashford's astonished voice. "Dear God, Thomas Morrison was telling the truth. It's all here. The chamber, the shaft, the symbols. We're going to set up lights and begin documentation." That would be the last time the team communicated with the surface. Subsequent attempts to reach them failed. When a rescue team arrived the next morning, they found the expedition equipment intact. Lights, ropes, cameras, but no sign of Ashford, Marsh, Chen, or Reynolds. No struggle, no rockfall, nothing except the unexplained disappearance of 4 experienced researchers. The final audio recovered from Patricia Reynolds' recorder offered a chilling clue. Dr. Ashford's voice can be heard describing the shaft. "We've lowered a weighted line to 800 feet without touching bottom. The symbols around the shaft aren't decorative. They're instructional. They describe a doorway, a passage to somewhere that isn't—" The recording cuts off mid-sentence, leaving the terrifying suggestion that they had discovered a gateway to another realm. Authorities sealed the cathedral cave in July 1968 with a steel gate, warning the public that the area was off-limits and dangerous. Yet the disappearances did not end there. In the decades that followed, reports of figures in historical clothing, glowing symbols and strange sounds continued to emerge around Crow's Ridge, suggesting that whatever Abigail Crowe had discovered in 1894 remained active, waiting, and possibly still claiming those who dared to investigate. Next, we will explore the 1973 disappearance of Jennifer Morrison, her mysterious campsite, and the ongoing presence of Crow's Ridge's symbols in the forest, showing how the mystery continued beyond the cave itself. October 12, 1973, introduced the Crow's Ridge mystery to a new generation. Ranger Michael Patterson of the Kentucky Division of Forestry was patrolling the Cumberland National Forest when he encountered a young woman standing motionless in the middle of a trail about 2 miles from the sealed cathedral cave entrance. She was barefoot, wearing a white dress of outdated style, her eyes entirely black, pupils dilated until the irises were barely visible. As Patterson approached, she smiled and said in a voice that chilled him to the bone, "The herald waits below. The door is open." Without hesitation, she vanished into the dense forest at an unnatural speed. Attempts to follow her failed. There were no footprints or signs of passage. This encounter, officially recorded by the Kentucky Division of Forestry, seemed like an impossible apparition, yet it was far from isolated. Half a mile from Patterson's sighting, his team discovered a campsite showing evidence of recent human activity. A fire pit contained ashes under 48 hours old, discarded food containers, and a backpack with the identification of Jennifer Morrison, 23, a graduate anthropology student from Lexington. Morrison had planned to investigate Crowe's Ridge on her own and had gone missing on October 8th. What caught attention most were the symbols carved into surrounding trees, identical to those reported in the 1894 Crowe's Ridge church incident. This chilling continuity suggested the same force, the same unknown presence, was still active nearly 80 years later. Jennifer Morrison became the 23rd person to vanish in connection with Crowe's Ridge. Her fate officially ruled as a hiking accident, though skeptics and local authorities quietly noted the patterns repeating over decades. This incident demonstrated that Crowe's Ridge's influence extended beyond the sealed cave, seeping into the forest itself. Witnesses consistently reported figures in historical clothing, glowing symbols, and strange singing echoing through the trees. It was a warning that the mystery of the cave was not contained within limestone walls, and that those drawn to Crowe's Ridge faced forces beyond comprehension. As the decades progressed, sporadic sightings continued, each one mirroring elements from the 1894 events. From Patterson's encounter to the discovery of Jennifer Morrison's campsite, the symbols and strange presences suggested a living, persistent pattern, as if Crowe's Ridge itself were alive and watching, selectively drawing people into its depths. Next, we will explore the 1977 and 1981 sightings of lights and singing, and examine how the Crowe's Ridge phenomenon evolved into something that defied explanation, reaching beyond disappearances into ongoing manifestations in the forest. The late 1970s and early 1980s brought a new wave of encounters around Crowe's Ridge, further proving that the phenomenon was far from dormant. In June 1977, a family camping in the mountains reported being awakened around 3:00 a.m. by an eerie, harmonious singing coming from deep within the forest. Gerald Hoskins, the father, described the voices as predominantly female, beautiful yet unearthly, singing in a language he could not recognize. Terrified, the family abandoned their campsite immediately. Their experience was recorded in the Kentucky Division of Forestry logs, but was treated as anecdotal, despite the uncanny similarity to reports from decades earlier. Then, in September 1981, 2 hikers observed unexplained lights moving through the forest at night, seemingly originating underground. Investigating the following morning, they discovered freshly disturbed earth near a limestone outcropping, but no source for the lights. These incidents were more than mere coincidences. They showed that Crowe's Ridge was actively manifesting, creating phenomena that both defied natural explanation and echoed its history of disappearances. In March 1985, the Cathedral Cave Gate, a steel barrier installed to prevent access, was discovered twisted and removed from its hinges. The force required to do so was immense, yet there was no heavy machinery in the area and no suspects. Even experienced officers admitted they could not explain the sheer strength and precision involved. By the 1980s, Crowe's Ridge was no longer just a site of historical disappearances. It had become a modern enigma, with events that suggested a persistent presence manipulating the environment. Reports of singing, lights, and inexplicable physical phenomena were no longer isolated, but patterned, continuous, and frighteningly consistent. What these accounts collectively revealed was that the mystery extended, far beyond human understanding. From vanished students and researchers to inexplicable sounds and lights, the ridge acted as though it were alive, responding to human curiosity and drawing people in. Anyone venturing too close risked becoming part of its ongoing story, a story that had been unfolding for nearly a century. Next, we will examine the 1989 National Speleological Society expedition, when 5 experienced cavers encountered a hidden passage filled with symbols, ultimately vanishing without a trace, and solidifying Crowe's Ridge as a dangerous and active force that no technology or expertise could fully confront. In August 1989, despite the cave being officially closed for decades, a team of 5 experienced cavers from the National Speleological Society secured special permits from the Kentucky Department of Natural Resources. Led by Dr. Richard Mendes, a geology professor at Eastern Kentucky University, their mission was presented as a scientific survey of the cave's upper passages, intended to document formations and assess safety for future research. The team entered the Cathedral Cave on August 14, 1989, armed with professional caving gear, radios, and mapping equipment. For 36 hours, everything proceeded normally. Check-ins with surface support confirmed progress, and early documentation showed nothing beyond the usual cave formations. But on August 15, 1989, at 6:00 p.m., Dr. Mendy's radio transmission revealed a startling discovery. Behind a false wall, the team had found a hidden corridor descending at an angle, with walls covered in the same enigmatic symbols recorded in 1894 and 1968. According to Mendy's, "We found a passage that's not on any historical map. It's been deliberately concealed. The symbols are instructional, not decorative. They describe a doorway, a passage to somewhere that isn't." The team prepared to document the corridor thoroughly, planning a careful descent. By midnight, routine check-ins ceased. When surface support failed to make contact, rescue teams entered the cave the next morning. They discovered the camp intact, with equipment, food, and sleeping bags undisturbed. But the 5 cavers had vanished. Unlike previous disappearances, this time the team left behind video evidence. Dr. Mendy's camera, left recording on a tripod, captured the final moments. The footage showed the group moving synchronously, almost trance-like, toward the hidden passage. Dr. Mendy's own voice was calm, even euphoric, remarking, "Can you hear it? The singing. It's so beautiful. They've been waiting all this time, below." Within moments, all 5 disappeared from view. The rescue team explored approximately 200 feet of the concealed passage, but found no trace of the cavers. By August 18, 1989, the operation was suspended, and the missing were presumed dead. In response, the Department of Natural Resources permanently sealed the cave with concrete, citing repeated disappearances and unacceptable risks to public safety. The footage, later leaked in 1997, became a cornerstone for paranormal researchers. Analysts noted the synchronized behavior and reported auditory phenomena, singing and phrases like, "The door opens wider, Abigail waits below." Skeptical explanations like oxygen deprivation or psychogenic influence failed to fully account for the instantaneous, collective, trance-like behavior or the shared auditory experience. The 1989 expedition cemented a terrifying reality. Crowe's Ridge was not passive. Even experienced experts, armed with modern technology, mapping knowledge, and professional training, could not navigate its mysteries safely. The Cathedral Cave was more than a geological site. It was a living enigma, a threshold to something incomprehensible. Next, we will explore the technological investigations of the 2000s, including thermal imaging, seismological monitoring, and paranormal research, which revealed ongoing activity and anomalies decades after the cave was sealed. By the early 2000s, Crowe's Ridge had long been officially closed, yet the mystery continued to pull the curious, the brave, and sometimes the foolhardy. Despite warnings, teams of amateur researchers, paranormal investigators, and even students ventured near the restricted area, driven by tales of disappearances and unexplained phenomena. Technology now offered tools the early 20th century explorers could only dream of: thermal imaging cameras, audio recorders, and advanced monitoring equipment. In March 2003, a team of 4 amateur paranormal investigators, calling themselves the Kentucky Paranormal Research Team, set up camp near the Cathedral Cave site. They carried digital video cameras, thermal cameras, and sensitive directional microphones. Their goal was to document any unusual activity near the sealed cave. For the first hours, the night seemed ordinary, but just past 2:45 a.m., the equipment began revealing something impossible. Thermal footage showed human-shaped heat signatures emerging from the ground itself, appearing to come from no visible openings. The investigators watched in disbelief as multiple figures, cloaked in the shadow of trees, moved with purpose, yet no path or cave could be identified. At the same time, sensitive audio equipment picked up singing, harmonious voices, unlike anything known, seemingly coming from underground. Some phrases were faintly discernible. "The door opens wider. Come down to the true place. Abigail waits below." By 3:00 a.m., 3 of the 4 team members, Jessica Hartman, Michael Torres, and Brandon Webb, disappeared without warning. The remaining investigator, Lisa Chen, emerged hours later, wandering miles from the campsite, disoriented and unable to recall coherent details. The 3 missing became the 26th, 27th, and 28th people connected to Crowe's Ridge. Their disappearance left behind only digital recordings and the thermal evidence, which would fuel speculation and terror for years to come. Following this incident, the U.S. Forest Service took unprecedented measures. A 4-square-mile area around Crowe's Ridge was restricted, warning signs posted, and rangers instructed to actively prevent exploration. But even with human intervention, the mountain seemed alive with activity. In 2008, a geological survey using satellite imaging discovered thermal anomalies in the area, heat sources beneath the surface that could not be explained by geothermal activity. A 2015 seismological study recorded regular underground vibrations occurring every 3 hours, resembling patterns reminiscent of human speech or music. These measurements were published by Dr. Robert Chen of the University of Kentucky, leaving experts baffled. The regularity and origin of these vibrations suggest either sophisticated human activity or a previously undocumented natural phenomenon. By 2023, the phenomenon had entered the digital age. A video posted online by local teenagers showed a blurry figure in a white dress, singing and calling them by name, urging them to come down to where the truth lives. The video went viral, gathering millions of views before being removed, yet further disturbances in the ground near historical thermal anomalies were later confirmed by authorities. Across 131 years, despite modern technology, the passage of time and official restrictions, Crowe's Ridge continued to assert its presence. Abigail Crowe's shadow lingered, her influence transcending decades, drawing the curious and the brave into her limestone labyrinth. Next, we will examine the patterns of disappearances and sightings across more than a century, analyzing their consistency and the warnings left by those who survived encounters with the woman in white. For more than a century, Crowe's Ridge has been marked by disappearances and sightings that seem to defy explanation. From Abigail Crowe's original descent into the cathedral cave in 1894 to modern encounters in the 21st century, witnesses consistently describe similar phenomena, symbols, and the enigmatic figure known as the woman in white. The consistency of these reports suggests something persistent, intelligent, and deliberate, rather than random misfortune. Rangers and hikers frequently recount the same chilling details. A young woman dressed in clothing from the late 19th century, appearing suddenly on isolated trails near the ruins of the Crowe's Ridge Church or the sealed cave entrances. Her eyes are described as unnaturally black, her voice both inviting and hypnotic, calling to individuals to come down, the door is open. Those who have encountered her report an overpowering sense that the urge to follow is not their own, as though the mountain itself or Abigail Crowe is manipulating their will. The disappearances themselves follow strikingly similar sequences. Initial encounter. Witness observes a figure, often near historical ruins or cave entrances. Hypnotic influence. Witness feels an inexplicable urge to approach or descend underground. Disappearance. Individual vanishes in seconds, often leaving no trace of passage, footprints, or struggle. Partial survival. Rarely, one person emerges disoriented, sometimes describing voices, singing, or visions from underground, but unable to explain what occurred. These patterns persist across generations. Ranger Michael Patterson in 1973, Ranger David Kim in 1994, and the Kentucky Paranormal Research Team in 2003 all documented remarkably similar encounters despite decades between events. Likewise, the thermal and seismic anomalies recorded by geologists in 2008 and 2015 suggest ongoing subterranean activity that correlates with reports of the woman in white. The symbols at Crowe's Ridge are equally consistent. Etched in stone and wood for over a century, they appear to form geometric patterns, cosmological diagrams, and possible instructions. Investigators note that these markings are not merely decorative, they may indicate passageways, ritual sites, or doors to an unseen realm. Each expedition that approached the cathedral cave, from Dr. Ashford in 1968 to Dr. Mendes in 1989, found the symbols in precise alignment with the areas where disappearances occurred. Witnesses who survive encounters often relay warnings: never follow the figure, resist the urge to explore underground, and leave immediately if singing or strange lights are observed. Those who ignored these warnings historically became another entry in the tally of missing persons. The cumulative evidence paints a disturbing portrait of Crowe's Ridge, a site that has remained active for over 130 years, with repeated human interaction, suggesting some continuity of consciousness or intelligence behind the phenomenon. Abigail Crowe's legacy, whether mortal, spiritual, or otherwise, continues to assert itself through disappearances, cryptic messages, and inexplicable environmental anomalies. In the final section, we will synthesize over a century of reports, scientific observations, and eyewitness testimony to explore what Crowe's Ridge may truly be, and why the call of the woman in white has endured for generations. Welcome to the culmination of the Crowe's Ridge saga. Over 130 years of disappearances, sightings, and unexplained phenomena have left a trail of questions that no science, psychology, or folklore has fully answered. From Abigail Crowe's fateful descent in 1894 to the modern encounters of 2023, the evidence is undeniable. Something extraordinary resides within the limestone hollows of Harlan County. The patterns are unmistakable. Individuals approach Crowe's Ridge, encounter the woman in white, feel a compulsion to descend, and then vanish. Investigators, both professional and amateur, have repeatedly discovered symbols, modified passages, and traces of past activity pointing to a location that exists somewhere between human understanding and the unknown. Even today, thermal imaging, seismographs, and satellite data indicate subterranean activity that cannot be explained by conventional geology. What makes Crowe's Ridge terrifying is its temporal reach. Witnesses describe the woman in historical dress, singing voices that have echoed across centuries, and symbols consistent over generations. The cave itself, long sealed and barricaded, continues to manifest anomalies on the surface: disturbed earth, glowing lights, and thermal signatures. These phenomena suggest that the cave, or what lies within, is not confined to a single space or era. It interacts with those who come near, bridging the gap between past and present, life and something beyond. Survivors like Lisa Chen in 2003 and witnesses like Rangers Patterson and Kim offer a chilling lesson. Crowe's Ridge is not a place to explore. The call of the woman in white is not curiosity, it is a lure. To resist it may be the only chance of survival. The consistency of reports over more than a century suggests deliberate design. Whether Abigail Crowe was a conduit, a practitioner of an ancient ritual, or something more, her pitying, resonance, or the force she unleashed, persists. Researchers continue to debate the meaning of the symbols, the mechanism of the disappearances, and the true nature of the cave. Some propose psychological explanations: mass psychogenic effects, hypnotic suggestion, or shared delusions. Others argue for paranormal or interdimensional phenomena, citing the impossibility of rational explanations for synchronized disappearances and modern technological observations. The truth remains elusive. For the locals of Harlan County, Crowe's Ridge is sacred and dangerous. Signage, gates, and restricted areas attempt to protect the public, yet curiosity persists. The mountain seems patient, waiting for the next generation of explorers to stumble upon its secrets. Those who have come too close report feelings of being watched, voices in the wind, and inexplicable urges to descend into darkness. The mountain itself seems to call out across time, repeating the same invitation. The door is open. Come down and see the truth. In the end, Crowe's Ridge is more than a geological formation or a site of historical tragedy. It is a living enigma, a place where history, myth, and reality converge. Abigail Crowe's descent, the vanishings of Dr. Ashford and his team, and the ongoing activity above ground all point to a force beyond comprehension. Whether it is cosmic, supernatural, or a hidden human practice lost to time, one thing is clear: the door remains open, and the call continues. If you ever find yourself near the forests and hills of eastern Kentucky, heed the warnings. Do not follow the singing, do not approach the ruins, and resist the compulsion to go underground. Crowe's Ridge has claimed 28 souls over 131 years, and history suggests it is still patient, still waiting, and still calling. The mystery endures, and the mountain waits in silence, as it always has.